Hey guys, and a very warm welcome to Friday Fretworks. This week I'm going to be showing you my new pedalboard. I've mentioned this in a couple of recent episodes, and I've had a hell of a lot of questions asking me when it's going to be ready. It is finally ready to go. The initial plan was to actually film the process of putting it together and showing you all the kind of steps involved, but alas, it took me just over 2 days from start to finish, so it would have been one hell of a time lapse. So I hope you don't mind. I've forgone the actual process of putting it together. But now that it's ready and raring to go, I thought I would take you through what pedals are on it, how they're being powered, what cables, what pedalboard, why I went with the build that I did, and just generally, hopefully, everything that you would kind of want to know about this board. So I hope you enjoy it. It's going to be a bit of a mammoth episode, I think, so I've got a long day ahead of me, but I hope it's worth it and I hope you enjoy it. So please, any questions, let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't already, please go and subscribe. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Instagram, all that kind of good stuff. So here we go. Let's take it away. So the most logical place to start would be the board itself. I've been using Pedal Train now for a couple of years. Very happily, to be honest. I've been using the Pedal Train 2 for the last year or so. Before that, I had a brief foray into Pedal Train 3, which I found a little bit big and a little bit unmanageable. It kind of turns you into Michael Flatley. But I've been looking for a new pedalboard for quite a while now, and eventually settled on custom pedalboards up in North Wales. Multitude of reasons. Chris Ryan, the guy behind Custom Pedalboards, has a fantastic reputation just for quality of workmanship, quality of build, and just general communication with customers. And honestly, from start to finish, he was impeccable. Very quick to respond to emails. Kind of took his time with my bumbling, vague descriptions of what I wanted and really helped kind of hone into what it was that I was actually looking for. On a practical level, this thing is incredibly rugged, and I would have absolutely zero reservations in recommending it as to be something that is going to hold up to the rigors of touring. So I guess that is the one kind of consideration. For me also, it's a big thing about it looking pretty, to be honest, which is a rather vain thing to admit, but I take pride and pleasure in wiring up my boards and using them, so it's nice to have something that's going to look compact and look pretty neat. And I would hope that I've achieved that with this. As I said, can't recommend Chris enough. Genuinely, if you're looking for something that's customizable and built to your specifications, really do give him a shout. He's a very, very good builder. And to be honest, that was the main thing which took me away from Pedal Train. Like I said, I've been using Pedal Train for a while now with no problems, to be honest, but I wanted something which was going to be done to my specifications, and without surplus room. The Pedal Train 3, like I said, I found a little bit unmanageable in terms of just being a little bit big, I guess, in terms of depth. And you suddenly find yourself adding needless pedals to it just to fill the blank space, at which point you're onto a bit of a loser. So yeah, that's the board. I will put the link below and in the video itself, so you can check him out. Please do give Chris a shout if you're looking for something. He's based up in North Wales. The next thing worth mentioning would be the power itself, which is mounted underneath the tier. This is the other great thing about this board, is that it's tiered, so we can tuck stuff away, and we can just generally keep things a little bit cleaner. I'm trying to lift the board up so you can see the power mounted underneath. I'll try and get some close-up shots of this as well. It is powered by the TheGigRig generator, which is that one there, which then runs into a distributor, which runs into another distributor, into then 4 isolators, into a Time Lord, into a doubler. And I'm going to put that down because as much as it is not particularly heavy, it does weigh a little bit too much to be trying to hold up by one arm. Incidentally, the weight of the board with the lid and with all of the pedals, with everything as I will be taking it on tour, comes to 20 kilograms, which is brilliant because that falls within the weight restrictions of most major airlines, to be honest. So that's very cool. As I said, the power is powered by the TheGigRig generator, which is their modular system, which basically means that you can add whatever you need. It's a 5 amp power supply, so I think they've said it can comfortably power up to 50 pedals maybe, so it's incredibly powerful. And I would hope I'm not going to have any issues with it at all, to be honest. I can't see anyone who has thus far. Again, massive shout out to Dan Steinhardt for sorting me out with that and making sure I got what I needed. As I said, it's a modular power system, so it runs into the distributors first and then into the isolators, each of which I think provide up to 130 milliamps of current. which, to be honest, for most of the pedals on this board is ample. There's 2 occasions where I had to buy adapters from the TheGigRig, which is the Time Lord to run the Emperor's tape delay, because that requires a little bit more current. And I also bought a doubler, which you may be able to see tucked away down in there in the dark, which turns a 9-volt current into a 18-volt, which now powers the Kali 76 compressor. Sounds great at 9 volts, but just gives it a little bit extra headroom, and I've become so accustomed to running that at 18 volts on my pedal train, I think it probably would have been folly to start running it at 9. As I said, with the pedal train, I was using the Voodoo Labs Pedal Power 2s. I was using 2 of them mounted underneath the board, and to be honest, I never had any problems with it. I think the one went down once and went back to Towman, who sent it off to be repaired, and it was back with me within a fortnight or so. So again, I wouldn't have any qualms in recommending them whatsoever. But for me, the downside of the Voodoo Labs is the fact that they are restricted to Europe, in terms of, not restricted to Europe, mine were per se. You can obviously get the ones that run on 110 to be used in the US or wherever, but the TheGigRig can be run anywhere in the world pretty much. Which is incredibly helpful, because that just guarantees that, if we get a call to go across the US, or we get a call to go across to Spain or whatever, you're not having to worry about kind of ripping your board apart to put a new power supply in there. So that's very cool. The next thing worth mentioning, also before I go on, the power, a big decision maker in the power for me was the fact that the Voodoo Labs tend to weigh a little bit. And a big consideration for this board was keeping the weight at a minimum. As you can see, the TheGigRig stuff fits very neatly under the lid itself, and weighs next to nothing, to be honest. So that's brilliant. The next thing worth mentioning would be the cables themselves. Also, sorry to go back to the TheGigRig, keep leaping them back and forth. The way the isolators are then set up, you basically cut your cables to length. So again, that was a big consideration in keeping things neat and tidy. Anyway, onto the cables themselves. The ones that are running out of the Quartermaster are Evidence Audio SIS monorail. Big shout out to the guys at Evidence Audio and the guys in the UK, which helped sort me out. Again, they're cut to length, they're solderless, and they are rock solid. And basically the fact that they're cut to length means that there's limited excess cable knocking around the board. Prior to that, on the pedal train, I was using Hoser Pancake jacks, which are great, and still are being used in a couple of places on this board, as I'll mention in a minute. But as far as I could find, they come in lengths of these ones, which I guess are 6 inches or so, a foot or 3 foot, which if you're looking for something which is a foot and a half, obviously then you're left with a foot and a half of excess cable you've got to find somewhere to put. And I wanted to keep everything on this board pretty compact and pretty tidy. Cables, as I said, are SIS monorail. We do have a couple of MXR even and Hoses of Pancake jacks left over, which are just kind of tying together a couple of the pedals on top of the tier, which I did primarily because I wanted to keep things pretty tight together and pretty kind of nice and bunched up, just so I could fit a couple of things on top of the tier. To be honest, the tier is going to be the layer, or the tier of the pedalboard rather, that is going to be subject to change. Tape delay, echo rec, and rotary reverb, 110% going to be there to stay. Katana is a brilliant pedal, but I haven't been getting too much use out of it lately. Marble Drive has found its way back onto the board since last week's Friday Fretworks, just because it reminded me how bloody good it sounds. Polytune is obviously going to be there to stay. And the SM Fuzz, to be honest, is finding increasingly less use these days in the Buck and Evans set, so that may be replaced in time with something a little bit more practical. I think that's it, to be honest. I think that's the stuff worth mentioning before we get on to the sounds and what things sound like. I shall run you through what pedals are where and how each of them sound, obviously in that later part of the demo. I guess the only other thing worth mentioning is this patch bay, which is up in the top right-hand corner of the board, again, made by Custom Pedalboards, which is basically just an input and an output for the board. The first pedal in line is the Fuzz, just because it does not like having buffers before it. And the last pedal in line is the EP Booster. So not much has changed since the old board in that respect. But yes, I shall stop whittering on and we shall get down to making some sounds. So without further ado, let's take it away. So we are all plugged in and ready to go. As I mentioned earlier, the main in and out for the board are the custom pedalboards patch bay at the back right hand side. So we're going into there from my guitar, at which point it leaves there and goes into the SM Fuzz. First in line primarily because it absolutely hates any kind of buffer being before it whatsoever. From the SM Fuzz into the Polytune. Theoretically speaking, we could probably switch those two around because this is indeed true bypass. But like I said, it's probably just best to play it safe and have that as the first thing that the guitar sees after the patch bay. From the Polytune into the Marble Drive, which, as I said, found its place again following last week's Friday Fretworks. That's most likely going to be getting used with humbuckers or P90s, so check that video out to hear what that sounds like. From the Marble Drive, we're going to go underneath the tier into the Seriatone Centura, which for me is an always on pedal, so it's set with its gain at its minimum before the treble and output are at noon. From the clone, we're going to go into the Quartermaster, which then obviously kind of runs through there as you would expect, and they're all labelled pretty clearly, before leaving the Quartermaster again and going into the Keeley Katana. As I mentioned earlier, that's not found too much use recently, so that may find itself being replaced for something a little bit more, that I'm getting use out of relatively soon, but for the time being it's there. From the Katana into the Hamido Audio Rotary Reverb, from there into the Echo Rec, and from there finally, the last pedal I actually operate with my feet is the Empress Tape Delay. From there it goes into the EP Booster, which gives the signal a nice little kick, a little bit of low end, a little bit of sparkly highs, before going back into the custom pedalboards patch bay and out to the amp. So given how many pedals there actually are, it's a remarkably simple system, I'd like to think, and very kind of intuitive and very straightforward. So first thing worth mentioning is that the noise floor when my guitar is plugged in, as it is currently, is virtually non-existent. If I play a note and then just kind of leave the guitar volume up, you'll see what I mean. Obviously a very small amount of kind of background noise, but virtually non-existent and really nothing worth noticing whatsoever. Obviously that will then increase the more overdrive pedals and all that kind of stuff that you add, but if you can get that to a virtually non-existent level in the first place, that's going to make life much quieter and much simpler later on down the line. You never know what you're going to be dealing with terms of venues, power supply, dirty power, all that kind of stuff. So the quieter you can keep your board, the better. And the only two things I can really put that down to is the SIS monorail cables, but primarily is going to be the TheGigRig power supply, which just is incredibly efficient and dead quiet. So yeah, definitely worth checking that out. Right, going on to my clean tone. As I said, the only two pedals which are actually on at the moment are the Seriatone Centura and the EP Booster, all of which running into TheGigRig sounds like this. Nice kind of clean tone, not too sterile, and as I said, dead quiet, which is very cool. So first pedal in the Quartermaster, definitely worth mentioning, is the Cali 76. I've waxed lyrical about this in the past, but genuinely can't say enough good things about it. It's a very musical, very dynamic, very transparent as well, which is unusual for a compression pedal, which they invariably impart their kind of tonal characteristics onto your signal. But this, I can't discern any change, to be honest, apart from a touch of compression, which is what it's meant to do. So if we do a quick before and after, you get this. Hangs on to the note for that little bit longer, obviously, and just generally makes things sustain, as you would want it to. Makes things very nice under the fingers as well, which is what it's all about, and just inspires you to play a little bit better, I think, ultimately. Feel a little bit lazy almost for making that an always on pedal, as it has kind of become in recent months, but it just makes everything sound better ultimately, which is a great thing. So we're going to leave that on for the duration of this demo, just because, you know, that's more true to life in terms of how I'm actually going to be using this board. After the King of Tone, after the Cali 76 rather, we have the King of Tone, set as such, pretty much all facing 1 o'clock, which Lee Anderton picked up on when I was doing the Anderton's video, and for no other reason other than that's how I prefer it, you know, when it's set. So it's not facing musical mecca or any of that kind of thing. So yeah, sounds like this with the compressor on. Very dynamic sounding overdrive pedal, which responds incredibly well to your guitar's volume and your touch, which is very nice. Again, very nice under the fingers. Moving on, we have what is labelled as the Klon, which you would probably be forgiven for thinking is the Centura, but is in fact the actual Klon. KTR, needs stronger Velcro on the generator, I think. Klon KTR. To be honest, Klons don't get use all that often as overdrive circuits, or overdrive pedals rather, just because people, you know, love them as clean boosts. But as you will hopefully hear now, this is a very nice sounding pedal when you actually use it as an overdrive. So if we turn it on. Very open sounding, thick overdrive, that in my experience sounds especially nice with a Telecaster or P90s. Moving on, we have the Tim, which to be honest is almost indiscernible the current way it's set as an overdrive pedal, so much as a clean boost. It's a touch more gain, but primarily just fattens things up a little bit and makes it stack very nicely with other pedals. So if we do a quick A-B. Very nice sounding pedal that is tucked discreetly away behind the fuzz on the lower level. I don't know whether you can just about see it under there, and we have totally lost the generator now. Definitely strong Velcro needed there. Let's get that back up in there if possible. Anyway, moving on, we have the Amp 11. To be honest, this is probably going to get the bulk of its use with humbuckers, but again, I shall give you a quick taste of what it sounds like. It's being used with the boost side so much as the overdrive, which is a very natural amp, almost fuzzy, I guess, in a way, in its breakup. So very raw, very kind of aggressive. So it sounds like this. Sounds gorgeous on the neck pickup of my Yamaha 720. Really nice kind of vintage sounding overdrive. Moving on to the Royal Flush, which is made by VS Audio out in Greece. Again, I uploaded a demo of this recently. Very cool sounding dual overdrive pedal, but again, I shall be using the boost side of this. Not dissimilar from the Amp 11's boost, but a little bit smoother, I would say, and probably marginally more suited to a Strat. Pair the two together, you get this. Very nice sounding overdrive pedal. Moving on to the modulation side of things, and the first pedal worth mentioning is the Boss PH1R phaser, which you may be able to see just over the back there. I bought this off a mate in school in the first year of high school, and Ryan, I do apologise, I think I fleeced you, mate, albeit not intentionally, but I think I bought this for a tenner and a packet of crisps. And I'm not quite sure what they go for on eBay now, but I know they're pretty rare. And a gorgeous sounding phaser pedal. I think at the time I knew literally nothing about it apart from the fact that it was green, and made my guitar sound like an aeroplane if you turn everything up to full, or a Dalek out of Doctor Who even. So now my slightly maturer self, I would like to think at least, makes it sound like this. Gorgeous sounding phaser pedal that, to be honest, is probably better out of the loop. It tends to play havoc with other pedals. So yeah, best off having it in the Quartermaster in that respect. Moving on, we have probably the cheapest pedal on the board, which is the Moore Trellicopter, which for anyone who's watched my last pedalboard rundown will recognise. It costs about 40 quid, and I think is hidden just underneath the Empress Take Delay next to the EP Booster. Set at the moment, a little bit, kind of what you would expect an amp trem to sound like. Very natural sounding tremolo pedal, which, as I said, for 40 quid you can't really go wrong. Last in the Quartermaster we have the Aquapus, which, as I've mentioned again recently in videos, I've kind of re-fallen in love with, to be honest. Very simply set. Wouldn't call it a slapback, but it's not far off, so that's going to get a lot of use. Love the simplicity of that pedal and the fact that it just sounds great. So, moving on, we have the Katana, which again, as I said, may or may not stick around for too long at the moment. But if it is going to find use, it's going to find use as just a little bit of a kind of level boost to my clean tone. So with the compressor as well. Does what it says on the tin and does it incredibly well. Moving on to the rotary reverb, multiple functions on this, but for me it's going to be probably finding most use as a rotary pedal even, simulating a Leslie. There's a full demo again of this on my YouTube channel if you want to check it out, but it sounds a little bit like this. Obviously in the past I've used the mini vent, but for the amount of times I'm actually going to be using a rotary sound during the set, that is going to be more than perfect, and obviously has the added advantage of being able to do a great vibrato and chorus sounds as well. Moving on, we have the Echo Rec, which for anyone who's watched my videos before will be pretty familiar with. Currently I have a little bit of a gripe with this, in that I've turned it onto Trails mode in order to achieve this effect. Where you're obviously left with the kind of naturally decaying signal, which is all well and good, but you get this problem, where you still actually get the signal coming through even though the pedal isn't turned on, which is obviously far from ideal. So the only way around that, I guess, is turning the mix down every time you're not using it, which is a pain in the arse. So I can see myself turning that back on a true bypass mode sometime soon, and just, living without the Trails mode. But when that is on, we get a very nice kind of rhythmic delay that gets a lot of use of the Buck and Evans set, especially in the middle part of Slow Train, which sounds like this. Very cool sounding delay pedal, just with a slight flaw, as I seem to have discovered. So, last in chain, we have the Empress tape delay, which set as 3 presets, denoted by the speed of the flashing light. Green, obviously, being a fairly quick slapback. Blue being a little bit more of a generic kind of, mid-tempo delay. And finally, as with the amber light, a little bit slower, a little bit more Eric Johnson, I guess, in that respect. Sounds a little bit like this. Cool thing just to stack under solos every now and then, just to keep things kind of, moving along. So the only pedal I haven't mentioned thus far, or haven't tried rather, is the Bluesbreaker, which, as you will see, is actually the first in the chain for the Quartermaster. May seem rather insane given it gets its use as a solo boost, and logic would dictate that go later on after the overdrives. But for whatever reason, that's where I put it in the chain, when I first bought it, and that's kind of where it stayed. That's where I've become used to it sounding. So yeah, with the King of Tone as a solo boost, sounds like this. So there you have it. As predicted, it turned into a bit of a kind of giant undertaking to explain it in full, but I wanted to be thorough, and I just wanted to talk you through the thought processes, basically, of why I chose custom pedalboards, why I chose the TheGigRig for the power, why I chose Evidence Audio for the cable, and just generally how I use each pedal and the thought process that went into, how that pedal ended up on my pedalboard in the first place. So apologies again for it being a bit of a mammoth episode, but I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you got something from it. Please leave any comments below, any questions. I will try and answer them about the board, despite not being the most technically minded person. Just about got through the wiring process of this without killing myself. So again, thank you for watching, and if you haven't already, please subscribe and just generally keep your eyes peeled every Friday for a new Friday Fretworks. There'll be one next week, there'll be one the week after if all goes to plan, so it's going to be a regular thing. So thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you next week. Cheers, guys.